Solar is a pretty big part of our energy infrastructure right now. Uh, and would love to just share some information on what's changed over the last couple of years to allow nonprofits to benefit more from it than they used to. It's not always been easy for nonprofits to, um, get solar. Maybe it hasn't always made financial sense. Now with some new rules, it actually might make financial sense for a lot of nonprofits out there. Um, During this presentation, I invite you all to ask any questions at any time. There's a lot of information out there, so if you have any questions, maybe clarification on something I'm saying, please let me know. I'd be happy to help throughout the presentation, not just at the end there.
Online can raise their hand on Zoom, or you can just unmute and say you have a question or put it in the chat.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Thank you. And so, solar for nonprofits. A little bit about me first and a little bit about Cromwell Solar. I've been with them since 2020. Solar on my own house, got that in 2017 before I was with them. Nice thing about solar is it just sits there and works. There's no moving parts. There's nothing to it. It's not like wind energy where we have to monitor it constantly. It's one of the benefits. Some of you already have solar. It's that easy. Maybe cleaning it every once in a while. Cromwell has been around since 1982. Started in Belton, has been in Lawrence since 2000. We help out Kansas and Missouri area, and we do specialize in small commercial and residential. So we've done quite a few churches, including Colonial Church just down the street at 71st and Mission, Second Presbyterian in Brookside. We also just did one in Independence where they fundraised the entire installation cost before they even paid for the installation. So their congregation helped pay for the whole thing. And then the church is getting the tax credit back as a direct pay. So they're able to really benefit there and do more good with the money that they have in their annual budget. So that's a little bit about what we'll talk about tonight here. Why can nonprofits get the tax credit now? It's because of the Inflation Reduction Act. The U.S. was really trying to make sure that we are diversifying our energy. Kansas has over 40% of their grid energy coming from wind power. It's one of the highest per capita in the nation, top three in terms of wind power. We don't have a lot of solar power, though. Only about 1% of our energy in Kansas comes from solar power, even though it is one of the top 15 states in the country for solar radiation. So we can benefit from this. We are one of the sunnier states in the US, and we're not. So what we're trying to do is just help promote that. The Inflation Reduction Act now allows nonprofits, schools, towns, municipalities, tribal entities who don't pay taxes to now be eligible for a direct pay program from the federal tax credit. The federal tax credit's been around since 2007. So I mean, for the first 15 years of it, churches could not access it unless a donor purchased it for them. That donor then took the tax credit for them. Or maybe the church purchased it and they sold their tax credit to a donor who wanted to lower their tax liability. This was a pretty common way to do it. People would buy tax credits for maybe 90 cents on the dollar. They then owe less in taxes by about 10%. And then the church gets a tax credit that they couldn't normally get. Now it is a direct pay, one form deal that we help you fill out, send to the IRS. Then you get a check back direct from the IRS for that full 30% of the system cost. That's a pretty big chunk. 30% of the cost comes direct back to the church. There's no hoops to jump through. There's no questions asked. It's, did you install it? What is the cost? Here's your money back. It's funnily enough that simple. For businesses and homeowners, it bases on what they pay in taxes each year to determine how much they get of that tax credit back in each tax year. For a nonprofit, a city, tribal entity, you get that full 30% back right away. So that's really nice. That makes the payback less than 10 years now, where basically what you would have spent in energy costs versus what you just paid for in solar reached a net zero point on a graph. You got to pay electric. You can't not pay it. That's part of living. With solar, you can prepay for it essentially. You can pay for these solar panels here. They're going to produce energy for 30 or 40 years. They pay for themselves in about 7 to 8 years of that. So in that next 22 to 32 years, they're essentially free energy at that point. It's not energy you're paying to Evergy, it's energy you already paid for. And so that's one of the nice things about it. There's a guaranteed payback at some point. The tax credit just makes that better. The payback previously was usually 15, 16 years, where it made sense for most churches. Now it's about 7. So that makes it a little bit more doable. Everyone is eligible. It's easy to acquire. There's no special, qualities you have to have. Literally any nonprofit can get it. And then there are some other grants in some cases, historical grants, rural grants through the USDA, and just there are certain entities that want to promote solar that you can go to that are just trying to give out money for it. It's a very popular thing right now. And the nice thing about it is that, again, there's no maintenance involved. You don't have to have professionals on site to help run your solar. It just runs itself there.
If there is a problem, do we come back to the installer?
Yeah, the nice thing about all solar installations, no matter who you're getting it with, is that there's a monitoring system that's tracking your solar system. It is tracking how it's performing and if anything is wrong with it. There's some sort of error code because one of the panels is not responding. Maybe something got unplugged by an animal or wind or something, or maybe hail damage hit it and it's showing an error code. Your monitoring system will know that, and it'll send us a message direct to whoever's monitoring it, whether it's a maintenance person, maybe the lead pastor, somebody who's in charge there, the board member, and then they can call us directly. We don't constantly monitor all of our systems, but we have access to all of them. So if you say, hey, can you check on our system? We just got this error code, through our email or through our monitoring app. And then we can just look at online really easily from the office. Here's what it says. Sometimes it's as easy as just us resetting something from the office. Sometimes we just need to send somebody out to reconnect something. Nice thing is there's not much that can happen to them. Hail and wind damage are about the only 2 things that do happen to them these days. And with hail damage, these solar panels, all panels, not just us, everybody, are tested against 80-mile-an-hour hailstones, 3-inch in size. They do not crack. So that is almost all hailstones that would happen in Kansas City to this day. Obviously, this summer we saw some real big ones in Shawnee. I don't know if anybody lives out there. There was some golf ball size hail, maybe even a little bit bigger. We still didn't have a single solar panel out of any of our systems break this summer. So it is pretty rare for them to actually break these days. So that's the nice thing about it. It doesn't matter who you go with. If something goes wrong, we can help you out, but it's pretty rare for anything to happen to them.
So you contract with the owner of the facilities,
Right.
and if there's a problem, they in turn contact you.
Yes.
So we have 35 different duplexes, and we have 3 buildings of 160 units. So if those have an issue, we would contact just you.
Right. Yep.
One person.
Yep. And we've got all of our own electricians on staff, roof guys, everybody's on staff. And we've got engineers at the office that can help determine any issues from the office. Yeah, we can help out with anything, whether it's a warranty item, like just some sort of electrical short or panel production loss of some kind, or if it's an insurance problem, maybe there was hail damage or something. We can determine what that is before you start, having to spend money. That way we can figure out, okay, oh, there's hail damage. Well, we'll figure out who your insurance provider is first, talk to them before we even incur any costs to make sure that they're covering our cost to come out, take the panels off, replace them with new ones. Or if there's some sort of non-nature related event, we can figure out there's a 30-year warranty with all solar panels these days, and figure out what's under that and get them replaced as needed. That way you don't have to have a lot of expense just figuring out what's wrong. Yes, sir.
Do insurance companies give you a break if you have solar panels instead of regular roofing material?
So no, they actually don't. It usually costs slightly more. It's just in addition to your existing dwelling coverage, whether it's a business or home. So you'd want to make sure to talk with your insurance agent first before signing up with any solar, because you want to make sure those are covered for hail damage. Depending on the system size, for a homeowner, it might not raise your premium at all if you have good coverage already for your dwelling, because they know that it's a very rare claim to be processed. For large systems, it can raise it up, $100 to $300 a year, depending on if you're a business. Like this church right here is a very large building. It would probably raise it up a little bit there. For a homeowner, I've never seen it raise up more than 20 or 30 bucks a year for annual premiums, though, and it covers complete replacement costs there. Nice thing is they know that they really don't have to worry about it much in this area. We're in Western Kansas. They do have higher insurance rates for solar because they do get more extreme weather than we do. A big thing with what the IRA was is that it's what gave nonprofits this option. The federal tax credit's been around since 2007. Nothing has taken it away. Everybody has continued to extend it or increase it. The Inflation Reduction Act is what gives nonprofits that direct pay option. If it is repealed, it would go back to the old system of trying to sell your tax credit to an investor or donor. So just be aware of that this is not guaranteed to stick around. It's probably going to stick around because it benefits way more people than they thought previously even. A lot of people have been taking advantage of that this past couple of years. The nice thing about it is your congregation can help pay for the system ahead of time with fundraising. That way, like what we've done is essentially do a buy a panel program where people are donating $100 or $200 each to help pay for the system ahead of time. That way the church doesn't have to come up with $150,000 or $200,000 for their system. And then they're able to help take care of it beforehand there. And then with 30-year warranties, the systems pay for themselves 3 times over before you even have to think about replacing them. Obviously, in 30 years, who knows what the technology will be. It's different than it was 30 years ago. So we can't predict the future on that one. But what we do know is that we still have systems from the 80s that we installed that are still working today. So these systems are not going to just go away and stop producing in 10 years. That just doesn't happen. Yes, Shane.
And isn't after 20 years, it's not that they just quit working, it's just the efficiency just goes down a bit. So they continue to work, just not as much.
Right. And that's part of the warranty is that all solar panels will come with a manufacturer's warranty that guarantees a certain level of production. Pretty much the industry standard right now is 30 years and less than 0.5% loss in power per year. So that means even after 30 years, they will still be at 85% of what they were on day one. If they are not at least at 85% at any point during that time, you can make a warranty claim and get the panels either fixed or replaced under that warranty because they're not producing what the manufacturer said. We have not seen anybody going less than 0.5% per year or more than 0.5% per year loss there. Most of the time it's maybe 0.25% loss, maybe 0.1%. I know my panels are still producing about 97% of what they were back in 2017. There's just, since they're sitting in the sun, there's natural loss that might happen for an electronic item, but it's pretty low.
And that's part of your monitoring system to gauge how efficient the panels are over time.
Right. All monitoring systems are checking it every 15 minutes, giving you daily, hourly, monthly graphs, showing you how they're producing. That way you can base it off your year one production and show that as proof of whether or not they're working
So that's
properly.
each individual panel, not the whole rack.
It depends on what system you have. For homeowners, it's almost always individual panel monitoring. For large systems, sometimes it's just for groups of panels.
Yeah.
They'll just have, these 40 panels grouped together and these 40 panels, and you'll know how those groups are. But for smaller systems and for homeowners, it's always module level monitoring, so you know how that one on the top right is doing versus the bottom left there.
So is it customary now to use microinverters?
It is, yeah, for large systems, if we're putting up 100 to 400 panels, it is usually still common for string inverters just because of cost there. And most businesses are okay with that. For homeowners and for smaller systems, maybe like Colonial Church, it's only 40 or 60 panels there. That's module level monitoring. Microinverters, we know how each one is doing. But the benefit there for those who don't know, microinverters versus string inverters. Microinverter, it's each individual panel is doing its own thing. So it doesn't matter if one is shaded versus this one being in the sun. But if you had a string inverter where it's all on one string, it's like a Christmas light. If one is not producing, they're not producing, even if they're bright in the sun. So that's the benefit of having a microinverter where each panel is doing its own thing. A little bit more expensive process, but it is pretty common in the industry now, and it is a superior way to do it there. So basically, the solar tax credit for businesses, government, and nonprofits is a 30% base tax credit for everybody. That's the minimum that you get. There are 3 different adders that the Inflation Reduction Act added onto it. If you're using American-made products, that is kind of a vague one, domestic content bonus. As if they are assembled or manufactured in the US, you get an extra 10% on your whole system cost bonus. That includes labor, that includes all of that. If it's in an energy community, what does that mean? That means that you recently had a coal or a non-renewable energy power plant that recently closed for renewable energy to be used instead. That energy, or usually a brownfield where it's unusable land because of something like that, you're now in a county that lists as an energy community. There are maps online that we follow for that to determine if you're in one of those. They're very rare. Usually it's in smaller rural areas where they used to have facilities that were coal plants. Or if it's a low income community, this is just based on census tract data and median income. Certain areas qualify for it, certain areas don't. If you're in Leawood, you can pretty much ensure that you're not in a low income community. There are areas around Raytown, around Wyandotte, around the east side of the city that do qualify for this extra 10% adder. And so that's one of the nice things about it is that they're not guaranteed. The 30% is guaranteed, but these other 3 10% adders are possible for a lot of different communities there. Most people can get that 40% then because domestic content's pretty easy to come by now. A lot of companies are manufacturing in the US, their panels, the inverters, the racking equipment. It's pretty easy to find US made now. So that is not a problem. And we do see some people are still eligible to get those extra other 2 10%.
Do these percentages also apply to individual homeowners?
They do not, just for businesses and governments and nonprofits. And then, yeah, homeowners, they still get that 30% guaranteed there.
I have the impression that to get the US sourced components, the prices are typically somewhat higher. It kind of whittles down.
Exactly. So it is usually a little bit higher for US made products, but on the bright side, they're easier to get for replacement parts too. So if we are using US made panels or inverters, then we know that if anything ever happens to one of them, it's pretty easy to get another one to replace it. A lot of businesses were already manufacturing in North America even before this. And what they did is they just crossed the border. Instead of Canada, they opted in Washington, or instead of Mexico, they moved to Texas. So we saw a lot of businesses that were already there doing stuff, and they just moved slightly to be able to qualify for these things.
Considering the potential changes in tariff coming up, what percentage of the solar panels that are installed are, would meet domestic content criteria?
Yeah, a large portion of them, actually. A big reason is because we've already had some tariffs on Chinese panels. They're just getting higher in December. And so what a lot of companies did is they are still Chinese owned, but they moved them to different countries, whether it was Taiwan or South Korea is a big manufacturer of panels, as well as Mexico and Canada. And so that's where a lot of panels have already been coming from. But quite a few brands have already switched to Florida, Texas, and Washington State. So we're not going to see a huge jump there just because they've already kind of been making moves to avoid that. And that's why tariffs are a little bit misleading and don't usually have a huge impact because companies just find a way around it, especially if they're localized to one country. Usually those businesses will just change slightly.
Do you have a map of the energy community?
Yeah, I could definitely share that. I don't have it in the presentation, but I can take a screenshot of the map and send it to Chad or Jerry and get that shared for you. Because there are different counties across the state that'll show which one they're eligible for. And sometimes they're good for both the low income and the energy community, which then you have a possible 60% tax credit.
Jackson County?
Certain areas of Jackson County, like Raytown, has a section that is eligible for both of those. And so there's a section in Independence that's eligible for both. So yeah, it's very localized, but the convenient thing is there is a map, so I can just put in an address and just see where it pops up. And yeah, it'll just give us that info. Yes.
So the community can actually be smaller than a county.
Right.
Is it like a congressional district or even smaller than that?
So it is based on census tract data. So it can be as small as, these, a few neighborhoods even that qualify as lower than median income for that area there. And so sometimes though, it is a full county where it highlights the whole thing for us. So like Southeast Kansas near Pittsburgh, all three of them are eligible. So any business in Southwest or Southeast Kansas can get up to a 60% tax credit. And they can still claim some other tax write-offs beyond that. So what is the process? This is going to be the same for all solar companies. This is not unique to us. We take a look at your roof and electric bills to see where solar could go, where it would make sense, where it can't go, and how much energy you use. That way we can determine how much energy you need. With most solar installations, you're covering 30 to 70% of your energy usage, kind of depending on how big your building is, what your energy needs are, and just what you're able to afford. Solar is not always the cheapest thing, especially if you don't have a very good south-facing roof. I wanted to show this because it's not a south-facing roof. Like most of us are able to see a building and be like, all right, well, that's nice open roof, no shade or anything, but these are the only two sections that face south on the whole roof. They're great. If it's an east-west roof, it's still good, but those east panels don't get any evening sun. Those west panels don't get any morning sun. So they're missing out on hours of daylight there. And that's really the big thing. We take a look to see what makes the most sense for your roof. Not every church is a great fit for it. Not every business or home is, but we can easily let you know whether or not it makes sense for you.
How much do you need when you look at electric bills? I got 35 duplexes and I have 3 buildings of 200 people. So do we separate those bills in total or do we look at them individually?
So we would probably look at those individually for that. We've done a few different apartment complexes and neighborhood projects where we've done it for 20 different households. We looked at each one's individual needs there. If they were all on, in one building, it's a little bit easier because then we can determine what the overall usage is. But for duplexes, we want to make sure some people are going to do a lot more laundry and cooking than other people. And so some people might need 12 panels versus some people might need 6. So we would want to take a look at each individual need and see what makes sense for them. And then we can bill it all as one project though, in the end, once we figure out this versus that there.
How many extra, granted, it depends on driving use, but how many extra panels are needed for
On average, 2 to 5 panels there. EVs really don't take up a ton of energy, especially if you're just using it as a in-city driver there. If you're using it to drive to here in Topeka and back on a daily basis, it'd probably take a little bit more than that. But most people don't use their EVs that way. They're charging it maybe twice a week. And they're only going to be using about a day's worth of energy on what your normal house would be using there each time you charge there. And so it's not a huge impact there, but we are seeing a lot of people who already had solar, just got an EV, and now they're wanting to do an addition. And that's the average that we're seeing is about 2 to 5 panels. If you do that, you get another tax credit. It's not a one time you already did solar, so you already got your tax credit. You're doing an addition, you get it again there. And so that's one of the benefits there. Same with if you are getting it for the church building, you can add that as part of your solar installation. We've done that with a few grocery stores as well, where they added it on as a benefit for their customers. They let people charge for free while they're shopping. And same with this, you can let people charge while service is going on. And then they got, maybe an hour's worth of charge, which isn't a ton. But it's a little extra nice benefit for some people who do have an EV there.
How do you run the line from the roof down to where the meter is? Do you penetrate the roof at some point, or do you go off the edge and come in the wall?
So that's going to be different for every building. For most buildings, we go around the outside. So for this one, for instance, all of their electrical equipment was going to be an interior room. Even their meter and everything was going to be interior in their electrical room there. And so we had to run everything inside. Most homes, most buildings are going to have exterior equipment, and it's usually safest bet to just run a conduit line around the outside of the roof down the side of the building. That way we're not creating an extra hole that doesn't need to be there. Just creates one less point for a leak to happen.
I've been told that this church has 5 different meters, and it's kind of like a termite mound, the way things are laid out.
Yeah, that's pretty common for something this size too. This is a pretty big building, and it's multiple buildings even, isn't it? Or is it just all one?
This is one building here, but
It's sprawling.
well, I guess 4 other buildings on 3 campuses.
Okay, yeah, and so that would be a situation where even if it was just for village church in general, we would hook into each individual meter and identify the energy needs of each one as opposed to one as a whole there.
So in this slide, how long does it take to do each house?
Yeah, so like for this one, for instance, this would take a few weeks. This is a pretty large system here.
1 day per room?
Typically, the roof part is about 1 day, like for a normal house, for a duplex, something like that. And then usually a day doing electrical work. With each meter that we're doing, you'd probably be out of power for about 2 to 3 hours while our master electrician hooks into your electrical panel, puts in a new breaker switch, and ties that into the meter there. So every installation, you're going to have a little bit different situation. If it's a nice, easy roof, a day at most. If you have maybe an older house that's got multiple roof faces and more intriguing like wiring hookup, could take up to 3 or 4 days. So, some houses are much easier than others there.
What are the costs of having to replace or expand or add to an existing panel?
Yeah, so replacing is typically covered by insurance or warranty work there. It's pretty rare to replace anything on these systems. Adding to it.
I'm talking about capacity.
So yeah, increasing your
Yeah,
capacity.
increasing capacity, you're gonna need additional panels to
Yeah.
bring all this together.
Yeah, so usually it's cheaper to add to a system than to do it in the first place because a lot of the electrical equipment's already there in place and we don't have to mess with that. Typically, we're just adding more panels, more racking equipment, and either tying into the existing system or adding a secondary inverter for those new panels. But we're not doing as much electrical work, which is the expensive part.
I have a friend here at this church that had his house done probably about 2 years ago. And he said after everything was installed, it took the city or the county or the power company like months they actually okay it so you can start using it. How common is that?
It's common for companies that aren't local. A lot of the companies that are local know how to communicate properly with the inspection people. We hear this a lot with a lot of the door knocking companies that come by, don't know how the local permitting works. There are quite a few local companies, so I always recommend people talking to them before they talk to any national companies, because they'll come from Utah and California and won't know our local rules. With that, there's sign up, we get a site visit done, we submit a permit to the city and to the electrical company so they know exactly what we're doing. After install, we let them know, hey, it's installed, come out for an inspection. Usually within 2 weeks, they come out, do the inspection, and you're turned on.
For 2 weeks?
That's
How long was it for you guys?
I'm thinking a little bit longer. I was thinking about a month. But,
A month?
you know, They may have been like a week time.
So this guy was several months. They couldn't believe it. The time it took, yeah.
they legally have up to 30 days after we request an inspection to do an inspection. So that means that company did not request an inspection then, and they were dragging their feet as the installation company. Because the utility companies legally have to do it within 30 days, otherwise they're breaching their contract that you did within permitting there. And so any local company will understand that, though.
We've got some questions online here.
Yeah,
Does Evergy still cap the size based on total annual usage?
that is correct. So they take a look at your last 12 months of usage, and that is the maximum system size that they will allow for you. That way they're not getting a bunch of excess back onto the grid. Plus, they don't credit you beyond zeroing out your bill for excess energy. So it doesn't benefit you to have a bigger system. You would just be giving Evergy extra for free if you did build a bigger system. So at this point, it doesn't behoove you to build a large system. It makes the most sense to build about a 90% of your usage type system. That way you're not really sending much back. You're just not buying from them.
Another question online from Frida is, our church has been told that our roof cannot support the panels. Is this a common problem?
That's an unfortunate problem for a lot of older buildings or flat roof buildings, is that they're not light. Each panel is 45 pounds. And so if your building is not structurally engineered for that kind of weight, because we have to take into account snow load, rain load, things like that beyond the solar panels, we don't want to install something that could give you troubles. So we do suggest having an engineer, either us or a third-party engineer, look at your roof to make sure it is safe. Because that can happen. We've had that for a few different roofs, especially flat roofs, because again, they'll just hold that all that weight on there, as opposed to a slanted roof where it's maybe not quite as
Well, to
heavy.
follow up on that, like ground mount versus roof, I mean, a lot of congregations may have some land around that they could, is there a benefit in ground mount over roof mount?
Yeah, two big benefits and one big drawback. Ground mounts are always going to be more efficient, because what we're doing is we're putting them at the best angle for the sun at our latitude. Texas here and Minnesota are all going to be different latitudes, different angles. 30 degrees in this latitude gives you the best year-round solar production. That's going to be better than almost any roof mount. Another thing is you're never going to have to worry about roof problems. It's a ground mount, it's easy to clean, it's not affecting anything about your building. So weight problems, roof leaks are never going to be at the back of your mind. They're pretty rare to have leaks, but it's a very possible option there. The big drawback is that it's always more expensive. We're adding racking equipment, 12-foot earth anchors, we're trenching wires. Copper is not cheap, and that's what the wiring we use is. So the farther away it is from your building, the more expensive it is. Labor is more expensive because it's more time consuming to install the racking equipment than it is to just attach to your roof. So it's always more expensive, but it is always safer and more efficient than a roof mount system. So the payback is usually almost the same. It's just, it'll pay for itself faster, but it's more upfront cost.
Is it ever cost effective to try to adjust the angle during the year?
So those systems just give me a little bit of a pause. For a large megawatt systems that you see, there's a really great one near Columbia, Missouri. There's a really great one near Oskaloosa where they're They're called single axis trackers, and they'll move with the sun or ones that you can adjust yourself throughout the year. The only drawback with those is that you now have moving parts that may or may not fail before the system does. For other racking systems that are static or never move, you're not going to have those same problems with moving parts. So they are going to be more efficient, 100%. But you're maybe going to have to run into maintenance issues that you wouldn't on a normal system there. But for large, megawatt systems, it's usually worth it for them because they're going to produce so much energy with those. The cost is wildly different for every church. It's not the same. It could be anywhere from $50,000 from a small building to $300,000 for a very large one. A homeowner can spend anywhere from $16,000 to $35,000. So that's why we look at your electric bill to determine what your individual group is. The average church, though, spends about $900 per month on electric costs. That's $10,800 a year. That's why the payback is so quick, because that is so much money coming out of the pocket each month. It is pretty rare to find anything that can affect your budget that much. 10 grand a year is a lot. Typically, you cover about half of your energy costs with solar. For a homeowner, you're closer to 100%. For a business, it's just your utility cost is usually so high, it's hard to get that many panels up there to cover 100% of it. We certainly can if you have the space for it. But most people tend to get about 30 to 70% again with your energy costs covered by solar. And then the tax credits, with tax credit and fundraising, you could virtually be not out of pocket from the church funds if you're doing it a certain way. And so that's what a lot of people are doing right now, is figuring out how can we do it together as a group to benefit everybody, as opposed to just one person paying for it all.
An online question, can you give a rough range per watt installed on a commercial building for cost?
Yeah, so for a homeowner, you're looking at usually $3 to $3.50 a watt, depending on how far you are from our office, what your installation looks like, things like that. For a big business, maybe a big church, you're looking at more like $2 a watt. The big thing with that is it's just cheaper the more you buy, just like Costco. The same amount of people are doing just more panels, it gets a lot cheaper quickly. So a person who gets a 10 panel system versus a person who gets a 30 panel system, that person gets a lot better deal per watt there for the 30 panels. This is one way we look at people's energy costs. Monthly, you're going to see the blue is what your usage is. The green is what solar would produce. The green is a much clearer line. The blue is random because it's going to be different every single month for every business, every building. This group here, I think they had an all electric building, so that's why their winter usage is so high.
Wow.
Most people's winter usage is their lowest of the year because they're using a gas furnace. A lot of businesses have been switching to all electric systems. A lot of people are doing heat pumps and mini splits instead of traditional ACs and furnaces. And so that can raise your winter usage. As you can see, this system was actually about a 50% annual usage offset of your energy, but it's not 50% across the board. In January, it's probably 35%. In May, it's about 90%. In July, probably about 60%. So every single month, you're going to get a different amount of benefit from your solar panels. And it depends on the angle of the panels and depends on what your usage is. A flat roof is going to be fantastic in the summer because the sun's straight overhead all day. That flat roof is going to be terrible in the winter because that sun angle is so low that they're just not catching as much of the sun rays. A 30-degree angle is going to be amazing in the winter because it's direct there. But in the summer, it's maybe not quite as good because it's straight overhead. It's catching the sun, but it's not a direct shot. And so angle really does matter with solar there. And here's just two more ways to look at that exact same system there. The usage month by month versus the total energy mix 59% utility grid solar versus 41% solar there. Their annual electric bill was $9,900 before solar. After solar, it's $5,800. So that means they're saving about $4,100 a year after having solar there. And that's kind of basically how we determine the payback is total cost of the system divided by the amount of annual savings that you get there.
What about tax credits?
So the tax credit comes at the first tax season there, and we basically deduct that from your total cost, making it a net system cost there. And so basically, if you have $100,000 system, you'll get a $30,000 tax credit back. And then if you're saving $4,000 a year, 4,000 into 70, it'd probably be, what is that? That's going to be like a 15-year payback there. So this probably wasn't a $100,000 system. Then it was probably shorter than that. Because the average payback is about seven years or so for a church of this size. What we've done for First Lutheran Church, for Colonial Church, is we helped with fundraising. What we did is we put a landing spot on our webpage and created a webpage for their fundraising to work. Basically, it was a buy a panel system. For a full panel, it was $600 donation from somebody. For a half panel, it was a $300 donation. That's not exactly the cost of each panel. That's that portion of that, that's including labor cost and all this stuff. So that's why those are those numbers there. What they did is basically once they reached their goal of buying all of the panels, they said, hey, we're ready to go. And they signed up for their system there. That's a great way to do it because there's no out-of-pocket cost from the budget there. And then the church still got a tax credit back after installation. So they just earned money on getting solar. And then everybody felt good about being a part of it. I think a lot of people prefer to be a part of something tangible than just general donation. Obviously, you want to help the congregation and want to feel good about where your money is going. But this is something you can see and be like, I helped do that. And that made people motivated to be a part of it. And then with Colonial Church, what we're doing after the fact is anybody who is either part of the congregation or heard about it and said, hey, I heard Colonial Church got solar. We're sending a $500 referral bonus direct to Colonial Church for anybody who mentioned them that was the reason they went solar there. And that's for all of our organizations. We've done this with the Lawrence Humane Society and quite a few other churches too. We're not doing this with businesses or residences because we really want it to be special for nonprofits there. And so we want to be making sure that we're helping be a part of the solution too. Because that extra $500, that pays for the rest of their electric bill that solar didn't cover maybe. Who knows? Oh, yes, Jerry.
Yeah, you have you can see the solar panels at the north end, down on the south end. Where did the wiring end up to the panel, I guess, to distribute the electricity to the rest of the church?
I'm not sure about Colonial Church in particular, but what we always do is we find the nearest main electrical panel, and that distributes it to the rest of the system.
Yeah.
And then we always find out where the meter is from Evergy or whichever utility company you have, and that's where the inverter is. That's helping talk to the grid and say, hey, we need
This
energy.
has micro inverters. So,
Yes, this one does. Yeah, I do know that.
Yeah.
And so that's the nice thing about them is they know how each panel's doing. It's all distributing during times like today. They probably had maybe 20 or 30% of what they would on a sunny day of energy coming in. It wasn't zero because it was kind of a light rain today. There was still some sun out a little bit here and there, but not the same as what it would have been 2 days ago. Nice thing is, as long as we stay under Evergy's net metering rules, doesn't matter when we produce, doesn't matter when we use energy, it's all the same to them. They just take the net difference at the end of the month of what you made, what you took from them, and there's your net bill, or maybe your lack of bill that month there. This one is one we did in Lawrence here. But what we do is we try and find the best spot on the roof. As you can see, there are different shades up there. Yellow is fantastic. Orange is good. Red, not so good. If you see any purple, just stay away. We try to figure out what makes the most sense. This one, they wanted some on the south side here. They didn't want to use any of the flat roof there because it was a little bit older. And so then we put some on that left side there because it wasn't street facing. It's in a historical part on Vermont Street in Lawrence, about 11th and Vermont. And so they wanted it to be shown on the south side, but not facing Mass Street. That's totally fine. We were able to work with that and give them what their energy mix would be based on the angles of those solar panels there. This is that roof right there. The racking is screwed into the rafters of a traditional shingle roof. If it is a metal roof, it's usually clamped to the ridges of the metal roof. If it's a flat roof, we do not actually, we don't do any penetrations, it's weighted down. So, but this style of roof, there are little feet that you can see, the little round feet there. That's what's actually going into the rafters. Those are sealed around to prevent any leaks from happening there. They are all black panels. Every company's going to have them. That's just industry standard. So that way they're good for HOAs. They're good for historic communities. They don't stand out anymore, which is nice.
So each panel is monitored.
Yes, for almost every system, we're going to have monitoring on each individual panel. Again, for those super large systems, we usually just do strings, but for like your case, we would definitely do individual monitoring for each one. Again, this is a flat roof here. So what you can see is they're angled up 10 degrees. That way they do catch a little bit of that sun in the winter, and they're also going to have water and snow melt off, run off. It's not going to sit on top there. And then in between each one is a cinder block that's holding down all of the racking equipment. There are no penetrations on a flat roof, just the racking equipment and the cinder blocks itself. We had multiple storms last year that had 80+ mile-an-hour winds around the city. Last December was some really big ones. There was a lot of roof damage on there. We didn't see any solar panels fly up or anything. These are really heavy. Again, each panel is 45 pounds. They're all racked together. They're not catching any wind there. They're staying there. But that's why some buildings are not eligible for it, because their engineering of that roof is not good enough to hold that much weight. That's a ton of weight right there. Yeah, literally, yeah. This is our building in Lawrence. We're right off Mass Street on Vermont there. We are solar powered and have backup power in case of outages. That covers 100% of our usage. Backup power is not always common with solar power because batteries are expensive. Most people don't have backup power. I'd say 90% of people do not have backup power. So if the grid goes down, they also go down. That is just a factor of there's nowhere else for the energy to go except back to the grid if you're overproducing, and there could be a broken transformer or a line down somebody's working on. Yes, sir.
Just one of the advantages of paying attention during SSC presentations. There's an earlier presentation that mentioned Evergy program where they were doing experiment. It's a trial program where they were going to install battery backup in a number of houses in different situations. And yeah, we actually got selected for one.
Did you?
So with our solar.
That's awesome. Because that was a tough program to get in. I applied for it as well, and I did not get in for it. Because battery backup is not cheap. You're looking at 18 to 30,000 bucks for a home, up to 100 grand for a business. But Evergy was doing it where I think it was like a 3-year study where it's just you're not paying for it. And I think you have the option to buy out the battery at the end, or they can just stop monitoring it. Is that correct?
Yeah, they say that they will either remove the battery and restore it to original condition, or you can keep it.
Okay, yeah. It was a pretty cool program. It was very hard to get it. And so it was only, I think, a few hundred people across the city that actually got one. But it's pretty cool that they were actually funding that and doing some research on it. One of the things that Evergy actually, I think, did a really good job of. I wish that program had been expanded a little bit. Yes.
So look, some people will try to sell you a gas generator that'll kick in when the grid goes down. What's the comparative cost of that?
Yeah, so a whole home gas generator, you're going to be looking at $12,000 to $16,000 to be able to cover a whole home backup. Anything smaller than that, and they're going to lock out your AC or anything on a large breaker. So you do need, if you're looking at getting a whole home backup, that's about the price.
But that's gas, and that would be continuous, where the battery at some point would run out.
Right, exactly. So there are benefits to that. It's a little bit less expensive,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit stronger. Battery backup, you're looking at 18 to 30,000. You have a tax credit with that, so that reduce that by 30% there. But there's a timeline. You're going to be having to live conservatively and realize, okay, if I'm using all my AC and things like that, I've got a limited number of kilowatt hours I could use before it goes away.
Yeah, I'm assuming, and maybe I was a bad assumption, that the solar panels would be able to charge the battery in the event of a grid failure.
They do, but a lot of grid failures happen during inclement weather. And so that's the drawback there is if you're charged up and your battery can keep getting charged up by solar the next day and the next day. If it's the middle of winter, you might be out of luck there. If it's either covered in snow or just super cloudy for 3 days in a row. Middle of summer, and it's just a quick storm that knocks out a piece of the grid. Usually you're good for the next couple of days as long as you keep getting charged up the next day. But your battery would give you, what your level of charge is and how many hours left you have on that charge, depending on what you're using there. And so, yeah, great point though, because they will keep charging up the next day if you have solar. Utility future, electric rates have never decreased. That's just not a thing they've done. We just heard that Spire is lowering their costs a little bit. They do that every single year. They lower it in the winter and raise it back up in the summer for gas rates. That's just a common thing. Evergy, they bought KCP&L and Westar a few years ago. They weren't allowed to raise rates for the first 3 years after buying it as a part of their agreement. And then they've raised it every year since. They're raising it 13% for Missourians in January 1st, including the time of use rates that they already put us on. So they've never gone down and they won't because they have to invest in their own infrastructure. They have to put new lines in, sometimes the burying lines, adding new transformers. Cost of their labor doesn't go down. So there's no reason why they would go down either. They need to pay for their own stuff. You can't choose your electric company. So that's a big thing too. You can't, in Texas, you can choose whichever electric company you want and they will bid for your business. In Kansas and Missouri, they don't allow that. They have territories and you have to go with who they choose. With solar, you're prepaying for that energy. So doesn't matter who you already have for electric, you can get solar. It's federally mandated. They can't stop you from getting solar. And they're basically saying, all right, you've already bought this energy. It's at a lower rate from what you're paying for Evergy. And you've already paid for it, so you don't have to keep paying for it. Just like buying your house instead of renting it. And as they update the grid, which they're going to have to, electric costs will just have to go up to keep up with those improvements there. After installation, there is monitoring to track your system performance. There's no maintenance. If you live in a rural area, maybe you have a gravel or dirt road near you, or during harvest season, some areas get really dusty. You're going to have to clean them a little bit. Most people in the city, though, rain will do the trick because we get enough rain at least once a month to cover it. I've never cleaned mine, and I've had them since 2017. If you live in a rural area, though, you're probably going to have to at least be aware of that. Never want to power wash them or anything, just dish soap and water, a regular hose. Warranty covers non-nature events. Insurance covers nature events. So hail damage, tree damage, wind, that's all an insurance claim. Anything else that can happen to them, it's usually a warranty claim. Nice thing is there's not a lot that can happen to them. And they are hail resistant, like I said earlier. It's pretty rare to see any panel broken. Last panel we saw broken was a few years back in western Kansas, and they had baseball size hail. Sometimes that just happens, but luckily insurance is there, and they actually do cover it 100%. We've never had a claim not covered.
my former house in South Kansas City seemed to get a lot of coal dust.
Really?
Residue off of Marie de Seine,
Oh, yeah,
and I had to get up there with a mop type thing to make that crust break loose.
really? Oh, okay. Yeah, so there are definitely instances like that then where you'd have to be more aware of what's going on up there. That's pretty rare. I've never seen that before, but we have had some manufacturing companies that said they kick up so much dust and it's, there's a concrete facility in KCK that has them and it's tough. Yeah.
I tried to do it with a water spray.
It was just too much. Yeah. Yeah, that's tough when you have something like soot like that. That's a different story for sure.
I mean, this was on 110th Street.
Really?
Do you have soot maps of the city?
Right, might have to actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, because most people don't have to worry about cleaning them at all. I live in KCK and never cleaned them once there, but yeah. Yes.
So on my panels, I have SMA
Okay.
and I could see how much energy was produced. But I wanted to see usage and that sort of thing, so I put a sense. And can you talk a little bit about that? Or maybe your monitoring does, maybe it's more elaborate than what I have with SMA.
Yeah, so SMA is a string inverter. It's German, very good brand. It's very common for ground mount systems because if they're just all facing one way, there's no shade. String inverter is usually sufficient there. It's tracking the production of the panels. To track your home consumption, you do need additional equipment, whether it's with a Sense app, which is what we do, just hook into your electrical panel. It's sensing what each breaker is doing. It's telling you what the whole house is using versus what solar is producing. Those are pretty common. Those are just a couple $100. It's the same as adding a Nest thermostat or something like that into. Maybe it's a little bit more, but that's about it. Some inverter brands like Enphase will come with a consumption tracker when it's tied into your electrical panel. And so it won't tell you what your breakers are doing, but it'll tell you what the electrical panel is using. And so you can see that same usage versus production graph like I showed earlier. And so Enphase is about the only one that comes with one of those, but the Sense app is really good for understanding your home usage, even if you don't have solar. A Sense app works for business, home, anything. If you're just curious about your usage and how maybe you can be more efficient, they're a great way to learn more about your usage there.
Do you have apps to put on your phone so you can monitor the various flows of energy and see the graphs and everything in real time?
Yes, so every inverter will have their own portal that's tracking everything and it'll show you how it's working. If you have Enphase, it's a little bit more detailed and will show your home versus
Not every panel, but the total system.
Yes,
How it's performing.
both.
Both.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, all of them will, if it's a string inverter, it just shows the total system. Microinverters will show both panel, you toggle to the right, it'll show the whole system. And you can choose whichever time units you want, hours, days, year,
Okay.
that kind of thing. And it's very user friendly. And they always notify you, even if they're covered in snow and just not producing. Your system will say, hey, your panels aren't producing today. Be aware, check on them. They each have different verbiage, but that's the nice thing is that they're always tracking what's going on there. The microinverter is a little bit more detailed, so. Why solar? Solar produces energy for 30 plus years. I say 30 because that's the warranty period. They'll keep working past the warranty just like any piece of equipment will. They're not going to warranty something that they think will break within that year. So these panels theoretically will keep lasting 40, 50 years beyond that warranty. Nice thing about it is that you produce it once, sure, there are probably some pollution concerns with solar when you're producing it. It's not 100% perfect, but it becomes basically energy net zero within a year because of how much energy they're producing versus how much energy it took to produce them. There's no other energy source like that. Solar energy is abundant. Everywhere can have it. It's not like wind energy where some areas are significantly better than others. in Kansas and Missouri here, it's abundant. Yes.